Good morning. Can you hear me okay up there? Wonderful. As chairman of the commission, I call this meeting of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission to order at 10:08 a.m. This Zoom webinar is live streamed on YouTube on the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission YouTube channel. For anyone in the public watching who would prefer to watch via a different platform than they are currently using, please visit our social media at Redistricting MI. Our live stream today includes closed captioning. Closed captioning, ASL interpretation, as well as Spanish, Arabic, and Bengali translation services will be provided for effective participation in today's meeting. Please email us at redistricting@michigan.gov for additional viewing options or details on accessing language translation services for this meeting. People with disabilities needing other specific accommodations should also contact redistricting@michigan.gov. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on our website, www.michigan.gov/MICRC, for viewing at a later date. The meeting is also being transcribed, and those closed caption transcripts will be made available and posted on the website, as well as written public comment submissions. There is also a written public comment portal that may be accessed by visiting the website, which is once again www.michigan.gov/MICRC. Members of the media who have questions before, during, or after the meeting should direct those questions to Edward Woods III, Executive Director of the Commission, at woodse3@michigan.gov. For the public watching and the public record, I'll now turn to Department of State staff to take note of the commissioners present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, commissioners. Please say present when I call your name. If you're attending the meeting remotely, please announce during roll call that you are attending the meeting remotely, and unless your absence is due to military duty, announce your physical location by stating the county, city, township, or village and the state from which you are attending the meeting remotely. I will begin roll call alphabetically with Commissioner Andrade.
Present.
Commissioner Callahan. Commissioner Curry. Commissioner Eid.
Present.
Commissioner Kellum.
Good morning, present.
Good morning. Commissioner Lang. Commissioner Lett.
Present, attending from Lee County, Florida.
Commissioner Muldoon.
Present.
Commissioner Orton.
Present.
Commissioner Zatella. Commissioner Vallette.
Present.
Commissioner Wagner. Commissioner Weiss.
Present.
We have 9 commissioners present. We do have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. First up today is adoption of the agenda. As a reminder to the public watching, you can view today's agenda on our website, www.michigan.gov/MICRC. I'll now entertain a motion to approve this morning's agenda.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Lett, seconded by Commissioner Weiss to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next on the agenda is section 4, public comments. If there's no objection, commissioners, we'll begin the public comment portion pertaining to agenda topics for today's meeting. Are there any objections? Hearing none, we'll move on. Individuals who have signed up and indicated they would like to provide either live or remote public commentary to the commission will now be allowed. I will call your name and our staff will unmute you. If you are on a computer, you will be prompted by the Zoom app to unmute your microphone to speak. If you are on the phone, a voice will say the host wants you to speak and prompt you to press *6 to unmute. Please note, if you're experiencing technical or audio issues, or we do not hear from you for 3 to 5 seconds, we'll move on to the next person in line and return to you after they are done speaking. If your audio still does not work, you can email redistricting@michigan.gov, and we will help you troubleshoot so you can participate during the next public comment period at a later meeting. Today, you will have 90 seconds to address the commission, and please conclude your remarks when you hear the timer. We have 4 folks who have signed up to give comment today, the first being Mr. James Gallant.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Good morning, Mr. Gallant. We can hear you.
Thank you very much. This is James Gallant. These are my opinions, Marquette County Suicide Prevention Coalition, and I am in the final throes of finalizing my petition to the Michigan Supreme Court. First thing is the First Amendment violations that you at the public hearings remember, and your unreasonable time limits here today. A few definitions like affiliate, and in order to determine that your approved rules of procedure are null and void because you didn't follow the rules to change the rules. And finding that there's hearing no objection shenanigans that you do all the time, that's completely unconstitutional in public meetings, and get the Supreme Court to do that. And we're also going to try to get to vacate the chair and others for unauthorized practice of law from the chair and the Secretary of State, because she clearly gave you the legal advice that you can have this meeting when she's not here today, when the Constitution says she was raised in the constitutional advice, and now you took that advice, and you gave the legal advice to Mr. Fink that he could facilitate an agenda item when it was not before the commission. There was no motion, so it was not before the commission, as Mike Brady instructed you, and you let it happen again, even after there were objections from the commissioners. To just to the state of being here, because that you and what I consider a hostile foreign actor, Duchess Witches, a foreign actor. He's the guy that was a citizen.
Thank you for addressing the commission, Mr. Gallant. Your audio was a little choppy at times there, but I think we got the gist of it. I do want to thank you as well for your dedication to providing public comment at these meetings, and I do mean that sincerely. Next up, we have John Leposki.
That participant is not present online.
Okay, we will move to Anthony Scannell.
Good morning, MICRC. I gotta hand it to you. You guys are no longer the most dysfunctional public body in the state of Michigan. That distinction goes to our wonderful legislator. What they do last year, they adjourned early for a totally fraudulent, sham, non-binding presidential so-called primary election that didn't even matter. And why should taxpayers in Michigan facilitate elections that are fake and fraudulent that don't matter? I don't know. And then they had 1 day of session from July to October of this year. So what a clown show our legislator is. But you can't blame me for that, because I have not voted for anyone currently holding state or federal elected office. So can't blame me. But anyway, on the report I'm interested in, I'd like to see the dissenting reports. I don't really need to see the commission report, because I already know it's just a barrage of data with almost little to no explanation, even though it says you're supposed to have an explanation. But it also says there's supposed to be a report for each plan adopted. You guys are trying to do 2 reports for the price of 1. That's kind of a scam. So maybe you should go by the letter of the law and do 2 reports like the Constitution says. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mr. Scannell. Merry Christmas to you as well. And to you as well, I'd like to thank you for your dedication to providing comment to this commission. Next up, we have Bruce Adelson.
Good morning, commissioners. I hope you can hear me. I hope you're doing well. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you this morning, and I want to narrow the focus that I'm going to speak to in the next minute and 20 seconds to the reports that the majority report as well as any dissenting report. I am aware that there is at least one dissenting report. I'm not aware that there are any others. But I wanted to express my concern that whatever reports are put out by the commission do not contain factually incorrect statements or inaccuracies, because depending on what those statements are, they could be defamatory or libelous. I think it's very important to have factually correct, objectively correct information in the reports that you put out without repeating specific parts of the dissenting report that I believe Commissioner Zatella wrote. I don't want to be in the position of repeating information that may be defamatory. I think it's important to realize that when you publish or publicize something online, you are publishing or republishing within the definition of defamation. Republication of libel or slander generally has been seen by the courts as having the same legal ramifications as the initial publication. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. It's good to see so many of you. Take care. Best wishes. Bye-bye.
Thank you for those comments, Bruce. We appreciate it. Happy holidays to you as well. And we'd like to thank you for your work for the state of Michigan. That concludes public comment for today's meeting. Next on the agenda is unfinished business item 5A, House and Senate Remedial Commission Report. If there's no objection, commissioners, I'll ask Edward Woods III to facilitate this item along with Mr. Nate Fink. Are there any objections? Hearing none, Mr. Woods and Mr. Fink, y'all have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioner Eid, and good morning, commissioners and members of the public. We do have a commission report which the commission is constitutionally required to provide as relates to the House and Senate remedial maps. For those who are interested in seeing the report, it is under the meeting materials. And although it is one report, it's done the same way as the previous commission report that had the congressional, the House, and the Senate. This one is only limited to the House and the Senate per the AG case. At this time, I'm going to share my screen. The commission report for the House remedial plan identifies the process. It talks about the compliance with the court order. It includes the resources. When I say the resources, what the commission actually used as relates to developing the House map, the public comments, the comments that were shared. All of that is in there. The court orders are in there. It also includes a dissenting report for those who did not vote for the Motown Sound FCE1. We only had one dissenting report. And then we have what's called a legal review with regards to the House. And we will also go to the next one, which deals with the Senate, which is Crane A1 and identifies the process. So we go through the 7 ranked redistricting criteria. We talk about what was used in terms of public comments and the maps. In this particular case, we have the close-up material that was done by the University of Michigan as relates to aggregating the public comments. That's all a part of the appendix. So you have those resources and then a dissenting report for anyone who did not vote for Crane A1, and then a legal review. So that is the process as it relates to the commission reports. Our distinguished attorney is here, our local counsel, and Nate Fink, and he will address the legal aspect in any review as it relates to the commission report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Woods, and good morning to all the commissioners and those in attendance. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me? Thank you for having me at this meeting this morning. I've been asked to provide an overview of the legal analysis that we did of the commission's report and the dissenting report that was issued after the commission completed its work on the remedial maps in response to the court order in the AG case. The Michigan Constitution, the constitutional amendment that created this commission, has a provision that says that for each adopted plan, each plan that this commission adopts, the commission shall issue a report that explains the basis on which the commission made its decisions in achieving compliance with plan requirements, and shall include the map and legal description required in the constitutional provision, relevant provision in that section. And it also says that a commissioner who votes against a redistricting plan may submit a dissenting report, which shall be issued with the commission's report. So that's what the constitutional language says. The context that we find ourselves in today is that, of course, the commission had done all of its mapping, the first round of mapping a few years ago, a couple of years ago. And those maps were challenged, both the congressional map, the state and the state legislative maps, the state house and the state senate. The congressional maps, the congressional map was upheld by the court in a couple of different challenges. The state house and state senate maps were ordered to be redrawn by the court in the AG case. The court ordered the commission to redraw, and the commission took that task on and passed plans that were then approved by the court. Those are the adopted plans as the Constitution contemplates. Those are the adopted plans that are at issue right now and that are subject to the reports that are to be issued by the commission and any dissenting report that gets issued by a dissenting commissioner. As Director Woods referenced, the commission's report directly addresses those constitutional requirements, covers all of those issues only as to the remedial phase of the AG litigation, specifically addressing the House and Senate, the State House and State Senate plans that the commission drew and ultimately the court approved. The commission's report does not go outside the scope of that, and it sticks to the basic facts of what the commission did. There was one dissenting report that was issued. That report was issued by Commissioner Zatella. That dissent, in my opinion, goes beyond the scope of the State House and State Senate plans that were redrawn by this commission. And it does that in a couple of different ways. First of all, it explicitly addresses the congressional plan. Of course, the congressional plan was not at issue in the remedial phase. It was not at issue at all in the AG litigation. To the extent that that dissenting report or any report that's issued either by the commission or by a dissenting commissioner, the extent that it's addressing some other plan that wasn't at issue, I think is outside the scope of what the constitutional provision contemplates. Additionally, the report includes what I think are inappropriate personal attacks and I think can perceive to be inaccurate representations of certain facts. I think it goes back through lots of details that predate the remedial phase that was at issue and in the commission's report and was the work that this commission has been addressing over the last year, almost exactly a year, I think, since the court ordered the maps to be redrawn. And to the extent that there's a rehashing of the commission's work prior to the work that this commission did over the past year on these two maps, personally, I think that it goes outside the scope of what the constitutional provision contemplates when a dissenting commissioner is submitting a report as to a particular plan that the commission has issued its report on. I should note there were actually two versions of Commissioner Zatella's report that was issued. I did review both of those. My understanding was, and I believe Commissioner Zatella indicated that there were just some formatting changes made. Based on my review, it does look like there was one change that was made to, it happens to be in footnote, I'm pulling up the report right now. It's on page 6 of Commissioner Zatella's report. In footnote 11, there was some language that was changed in it sort of gets a little bit into the weeds, but I'll just read this. It's footnote 11. I'm not going to read it into the record, but there was a provision and a reference to Commissioner Eade and the treatment of other commissioners related to Commissioner Eade and making him chair. And it referenced in the prior version that it was related to his testimony. That provision, the reference to his testimony, that part, that phrase, like 3 or 4 word phrase, was taken out in the second report that was issued. Other than that, I don't believe there were any substantive changes in the second report. But as I indicated, I do believe that it's outside the scope of what's contemplated by the constitutional provision. All that said, the Constitution and the Commission's rules of procedure do not provide a mechanism for the Commission to withhold the publication of a dissenting report or the issuance of a dissenting report. In fact, as I indicated, the constitutional provision explicitly says that a dissenting report shall be issued with the Commission's report. So we can note that, and I believe the Commission has indicated that the Commission, once the Commission, I believe, will be taking a vote on approving the Commission report. That includes an indication that the Commission is not in any way endorsing any of the factual representations or otherwise in the dissenting report from Commissioner Zatella. However, I don't believe that the Commission is within its legal right to withhold issuance of that report. But I do not think that the dissenting report needs to be appended to or included as a single document or anything like that. I believe it's perfectly appropriate for it to be issued separately. And, it can be very clear that it's a separate report issued by a dissenting commissioner and that it's not in any way endorsed by this Commission. I don't see any problem with that. Again, all that the Constitution requires is that the report be issued with the Commission's report. It doesn't have to be appended to it, attached to it in any way, for future commissions or for the historical record. There doesn't have to be any endorsement of that report by this Commission by including it in any way. And to this question of, and the issue of, publication of what might be misrepresentations or other inaccuracies. Like I said, I believe the Commission has a constitutional obligation to issue that report, and it can be done separately and made clear that this Commission is not endorsing that. And so, to the extent that there's concerns about potential legal ramifications of publications related to a commissioner's inaccuracies in a dissenting report, I think that's the sort of prudent way, the most prudent way forward. So with that, I will be happy to take any questions to the extent anybody has any. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Fink. Are there any questions for Mr. Fink, commissioners? Commissioner Orton.
Well, so you kind of addressed this, but I'm just wondering, to Bruce Adelson's point, we republish, false statements. Can they then be used as fact?
Thank you, Commissioner Orton, for that question. I don't want to speculate about potential theoretical factual scenarios in an open forum like this about potential litigation. That said, as I indicated, I believe it's appropriate for the commission in adopting, ultimately, if the commission does adopt the report, the commission's report as is, where there's an explicit statement that the commission does not in any way endorse the dissenting report, and the fact that it's issued separately, I think should make it clear to the public and to anybody who's seeing that the commission is not in any way endorsing that. I don't see a way around the constitutional obligation to issue any dissenting report. And so I do think that it has to be issued. But I don't think that the commission is in any way endorsing that dissenting report, or frankly, any other, dissenting report that would be issued. Obviously, this is the only one that's before the commission that's been submitted and is at issue.
Commissioner Orton.
So then my second question is, we voted a deadline for dissenting reports to be in. And then the second version came in after that deadline, well after that deadline. So which one are we, publishing?
I don't know if that question's directed to me.
I don't know either. I
Okay,
know it's
yeah,
how are we deciding?
As I indicated, my review of that report appears to be primarily that the new, the changes were formatting based and were not substantive, other than that one thing that I mentioned. If they're cleaning up clerical mistakes and that sort of thing, I think it's, I frankly don't see a major issue with that. If there was a big significant substantive change to the new report, then that would be a totally different story from my perspective, because, the commission set a deadline, and I'd sort of defer to the commission, I suppose, on that issue, because the commission on its own set that deadline, and the commission under the Constitution is allowed to, govern itself and establish its rules and deadlines and the like. And so, to the extent the commission wants to take that up, I defer to the commission. But again, it happens to be in this particular instance, substantively, for the most part, it appears to be the same. And so, I'm not sure that there's a major issue with it, but I hear your point.
Thank you.
Mr. Fink, I have a question. I think the majority of us would agree with your assessment that the dissenting report goes well beyond the scope of what the Constitution contemplates a dissenting report should be. Given that we are a self-regulating body, do we have the authority to make rules about what can be contained in a dissenting report beyond what's in the constitutional requirements?
Thank you, Commissioner Reed, for that question. Hypothetically, I suppose the commission can, obviously the commission has created lots and lots of rules under which it governs itself. I think we're sort of after the fact now in terms of the commission's report and the dissenting report that's been issued. And basically what we have is this constitutional language and nothing more. And I don't see a provision in this constitutional language that would allow the commission to somehow limit what's issued. Like I said, I've now said this a couple times, so I apologize for repeating myself, but the commission has, in its report that I think the commission will be voting on today, has explicitly said that it's not in any way endorsing anything that's in the dissenting report. And frankly, whatever is in a dissenting report, I think by definition, like the commission itself went a different way than whoever the dissenting commissioner is. And so I think that sort of speaks volumes anyway. But to sort of get ultimately get back to your question, I think theoretically, the commission could certainly adopt any rules that it wants to. But, you know, to sort of retroactively change things at this point, as to these reports, I think would be a tricky thing to do.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Are there any more questions for Mr. Fink? Well, in that case, oh, Commissioner Orton?
One more. So then we have to vote on the final report, right? To make it, to
Correct.
publish it.
That's correct.
So we need to put forth a motion to do that. Is this the time that we're doing that? And so we don't vote on the dissenting report, that just kind of is published. So how do we distinguish? We are in support of the commission report. The dissenting report is just out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the motion can be to approve the commission's report as presented. And, you know, I suppose separately that the dissenting report will be issued separately, you know, with the commission's report, but not appended to it or something like that. And I mean, to the extent the commission wants to include some sort of explicit statement that the commission doesn't endorse. I mean, again, that's in the report itself, in the commission's report, that the commission is not endorsing anything that's in the dissenting report. And so again, I think that kind of speaks for itself, but I mean, commission can consider any motion that it wants in terms of how to structure that, as long as it's complying with the constitutional obligation to issue a report.
Thank you.
Well, with that said, I'll put forward a motion. That motion is to consider the commission report and the dissenting report as two unique and separate documents for publication purposes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those favor of the motion to consider the commission report and the singular dissenting report as two distinguishedly separate documents for publication, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. I'll also make a motion to publish the commission report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by myself, seconded by everyone, but we'll say Commissioner Weiss. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of the motion to publish the commission report, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Wonderful. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Are there any other motions pertaining to this matter, commissioners?
I don't think you asked for it.
Spartan of State, did I ask for nays on that last vote?
You did not. I'm sorry.
That is all right. Thank you, Commissioner Orton. We'll back up a little bit. We are still on the motion to publish the commission report. All those against the motion, please raise your hand and say nay. Wonderful. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Are there any more motions pertaining to this matter, commissioners? Mr. Fink, do you think we've completed our constitutional duty regarding this matter?
I do, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fink. We'll now move on to the next item of business on the agenda. That is item 5B, archive updates. If there is no objection, I'll ask Executive Director Woods and the Archives Subcommittee to facilitate this item. Are there any objections? Hearing none, Mr. Woods, you have the floor.
Thank you, Commissioner Eat. Let me share my screen. As you know, the Archive Committee consists of Commissioners Cynthia Orton, Janice Villette, and Elaine Andrade. We've been working with two places with regards to the archives, the state of Michigan, which will be housed here, the Michigan Library and Historical Center. You'll also be able to access materials in person, but also online, as well as the University of Michigan at the Bentley Historical Library, where you'll also be able to access materials in person and online. We are in the process of transferring the information from the My Districting website so that we have it on our website in terms of getting those as a PDF, because My Districting website will be going down, and we'll be having that and updating our website with those information so that the public and those who want to research can have it. Today, we're happy to have Cynthia Gehring here, who is with the state of Michigan, and she has been outstanding in helping us navigate through the process. And she's going to share at this time so that you know exactly what you will be able to find, you as well as the listening public, as relates to the inaugural Michigan Independent Citizens Commission, Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission's work, not just for 2022, but also 2024. So without further ado, we'll welcome Ms. Gehring to the mic for a brief presentation, and she'll share and answer any questions that you may have. Let's give her a round of applause. She's been wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. So at the Archives of Michigan, we'll have, well, something you can look at 24/7, be online, the whole website, all the different iterations of the commission's website is currently archived and will be available, also available to anyone. So Bentley can also link to it there. We're also archiving all the social media channels that the commission has used, great content there. And then there's the physical records. So any paper records that would come to us, including the reports, Edward's been very good about making sure we have all of that archived. And then finally, all of the digital files that the commission has created. And those are linked on the website, and you can download them in part of the Internet Archive, but we're also going to have all of those because there's a lot that the commission has created available in our digital archive called Michiganology. So you'll be able to search the collection, all the digital items there as well. We estimate over 3,000 digital files, could be more. See how it plays out. So that's what we'll have. We started on most of it, but it's not finished because the commission is not finished quite yet. Any questions?
I guess the question I have is, how long will that take you to have this done? And then will we be notified when we can access all of it?
So the length of time really depends on how long it takes to get us all of the files. I think after the holidays, we'll really move on that with the Secretary of State's office to get all the files here. It'll be a top priority for us. I'm hoping within 6 months, it will all be archived and available, cataloged. Bentley can catalog it as well and link to it. And I'm happy to send out announcements personally to the commissioners, but we'll also have a little, with our newsletter and such in the archives for public. Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Weiss. Commissioner Kellum.
Hi, I'm Commissioner Kellum. No question, just a thank you, a huge extension of gratitude for taking part in storytelling, because culturally, as well as what we've been doing in this kind of semi-political but very political way, has been telling the story of the commission as a body, but of our individual efforts. So I can't wait to see, what this turns into in this wave of so much commentary, right, that you are a part of not revising the commission's history. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're very welcome. It's a fun job. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Woods, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I would, knowing that the commission's planning to go dormant, I would like to pass the dormancy stage to utilize the archive committee to see this project. And so I would like if, Mr. Chair, you could entertain a motion that Commissioners Cynthia Orton, Janice Villette, and Elaine Andrade can continue to assist in enabling motion with regards to the archive project.
Commissioner Orton.
I can make that motion if you like. Okay, that those of us serving on the Archiving Commission, which is me, Commissioner Villette, Commissioner Andrade, continue to help with the archiving through the committee until it's all complete. Yeah.
I'll second that motion. Thank you, Commissioner Villette. We have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any discussion on the motion? I see Commissioner Lett, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I don't assume that this is anticipated that this will be a committee that will be paid for whatever they do.
Correct. Pro bono.
That then needs to be in part of the motion. That you'll be serving pro bono as you practically have all of us have done for the last several years.
Thank you for pointing that out. I will add to my motion that this will be non-paid volunteer service.
Is that an amendment, Commissioner?
Sure.
Okay, well, we will vote on the amendment to add to the motion that it be unpaid for the duration of the subcommittee's work. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The amendment passes. We will now move back to the original motion. Is there any more discussion on it? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of the motion for the archive subcommittee to continue on until the work of archiving the commission's work is complete, unpaid, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it and the motion is adopted.
You just put it up.
Mr. Lett, is your hand still raised?
It is. I know I've made enemies of 3 people. I'm sorry about that.
Well, I'd like to thank those 3 for continuing the work on behalf of this great state pro bono. It's very nice of y'all. Okay, we will now move on to the next item on the agenda. Contracts, best practices, and review. If there's no objection, commissioners, I'll ask once again, Mr. Woods, to facilitate this item. Is there any objection? Seeing none, Mr. Woods, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Commissioner. The contract practice review team consists of Commissioner Steve Lett, Donna Callahan, and Marcus Muldoon. They reviewed contracts from Baker Hostetler Election Data Services, Federal Compliance Consulting, and Fink Brussick. As you know, we amended the contracts to ensure that the requirements that were actually taking place that we had, we weren't getting weekly reports, they were actually monthly reports. But we also asked for our bills to be turned in on the 10th of every month, so we had a chance to review. And we have an outstanding issue with election data services with regards to billing for October, November, and December. And so what I would like to do is continue to work with this committee as well as our legal counsel to ensure that we get this rectified so that the amount the commission is paying is accordance to the contract. And so I'm looking, Commissioner Ede, for a similar motion that was passed for the Archives Committee for the Contract Best Practices Review Committee.
I'll make that motion. I move that
Thank you, Mr. Woods.
the three individuals
Commissioners,
on
are
the
there any
contract.
motions?
Do you hear me, Anthony?
I will motion to extend the contract best practices.
Again,
pro bono
until
until
I'll take care of it. The local counsel will be working at their regular rate, but we're just referring to the commissioners as pro bono. He wanted to make sure I made that very, very clear for clarity. So Andy, please pick that up so that there's no confusion or misunderstanding that Fink Brussick will still continue to get paid during that time.
Thank you, Director Woods. I have to go back and answer to my father. So it'll be trouble. Loves to do pro bono work, but we look for other opportunities. Yes, yes, exactly. Thank you.
That was seconded, Commissioner Mulder. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted.
We'll now move on to new business. Next on our agenda is new business item 6A, 2024 back reports.
Chair, can you all, if you are not speaking into your microphone, make sure it is muted? They're having a hard time with translation and your computers. There's an echo online. So just make sure everything is muted if you're not speaking, please.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, just make sure both the computer audio and your mics are muted.
Seems to be a little feedback in between. Moving on to 2024 map performance. We have Dr. Matt Grossman here to help us facilitate this item. Mr. Grossman, we were just about to get to you. Thank you for joining. Do you need a few minutes?
I don't, but is my, Edward, do you have my card?
All right. Well, if there's no objection, we will hear from Dr. Grossman about the 2024 map performance. Is there any objection, commissioners? Seeing none, Dr. Grossman, please come join us and we'll give you a few minutes to get set up here.
Good to see you all. All right, we look ready. Thanks. We have some early information from the latest election about the new maps, and I am a political science professor, so you'll forgive a little bit of additional info on the election results and kind of what we can learn from them about this process. And you all know that we've been working with John Agia as well in the economics department at MSU on some of this analysis, including this one. Now we're all right. So the easier thing to evaluate is the statewide partisan fairness in the new maps and the new results. And this is a fairly straightforward story. Republicans won 51.2% of the two-party vote share in Michigan. That means if you add up all of the House candidates on the Republican side and all the ones on the Democratic side, and you say, how much did the Republicans win out of all those people who voted for Republicans or Democrats, you get to 51.2%. So Republicans won a bare majority of the statewide vote for the State House of Representatives, and they won 52.7% of the seats. That is, they won 58 out of 110 seats in the Michigan House of Representatives. And that is about as perfect as you can get for matching the statewide vote to the number of seats. It is actually perfect when you round for the efficiency gap measure that the commission has favored in some instances. But pretty much any kind of measure you're going to use is going to show that that is equivalent to what you would want to get. The Republicans won the statewide vote. You'd want them to win the majority of seats much, and you want them to not have a very large majority. And that is the same thing that happened in 2022 on the other side. So the Democrats won a bare majority of the statewide vote in 2022, and they also won a bare majority of the seats in the State House of Representatives. There was a vote shift of 1.8% from 2022 statewide and a seat shift of 3.6%, which is again by almost all of the measures that people use to evaluate partisan fairness is what you want to see. In fact, that ratio of 2 is what people usually aim for, a seat shift about twice as big as the vote shift. So we're again in the territory where all existing measures of partisan fairness would be pleased with the results. Sometimes we count the votes differently based on uncontested seats versus contested seats, but we only had one uncontested seat, so it really doesn't matter how you do the statewide counting for this election. And we got the House of Representatives. Here, Republicans won 50.4% of the two-party vote share, again, calculated the same way. If you count up all of the votes for U.S. House of Representatives candidates in Michigan, and they won 53.8% of the seats, or 7 out of 13. You'll notice we have 13 seats, and so there's no way for the parties to get an equivalent number of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. So that is as close as you could get. Again, Republicans won the state, got more votes statewide for Congress, and they got more seats statewide, but only by one district, which is, again, as close as you can get to partisan fairness. And again, is similar to 2022 when the same thing happened on the opposite side. The Democrats won more votes statewide for U.S. Congress and won one more seat than the Republicans for the U.S. Congress. There were no uncontested seats, and there were 2 essentially close races here that we'll go through in a second. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay. Everything else is obviously harder to evaluate, but I did want to draw a little bit on the redrawing because Democrats retained all 15 of the redrawn state house seats. Of course, the Senate maps haven't been tested yet. And 14 incumbents ran and won. Even when they were districted into new districts, they still won their races. There was one retiring member who was replaced by a new member. So you could say there was one additional likely member of the Black Caucus from the results. There was also a one contested primary where the incumbent was not defeated, and the distribution of black votes across other candidates wasn't clear. But basically very little change in these districts, despite a pretty considerable change in the district lines, not much change in terms of where the candidates drew from. And a lot of that is due to incumbency advantages, which are normal in politics, but we're here even when the district lines change. Usually we would expect the incumbency advantage to go down from redrawn district lines, and it didn't seem to make a major difference here. There's also very little change to statewide racial representation compared to previous elections. So not much change in terms of the racial distribution of members of the Michigan House. Of course, we don't know yet anything about Black preferred candidates in primaries or in general elections. Any questions about that? I will just pause here for a second to say, there is a case to be made that the original maps that the commission drew created the incumbency advantages that were retained through the redrawing. So there is one way to see this as there was a lot of redrawing and it didn't make a lot of change on the ground, but I think folks who were unhappy with the original maps would say that the current election results still retain the influence of the previous maps, but we're unable to sort of figure out whether how true that is. Nationwide, there was just a shift to, there was a question.
Commissioner Lett?
Yeah, Matt, I don't expect that you've done this, but on our original House seats, which were subject of the litigation, did you happen to go back and look and see what the outcome of the original ones would have been?
We did not do an analysis, but I can tell you there wasn't any district that would have voted Republican, at least in the presidential election. So that would suggest that there wasn't any likely change from the partisan distribution of votes across those two maps. Does that answer the question?
Well, I don't know if there's a true answer to it because there wasn't an actual vote taken, but
yeah. It's hard to figure out how would the current candidates have done in the old districts, but we can look at the presidential vote and to say that the distribution of voters between the Republicans and Democrats didn't change that much.
Yeah, I think the bigger concern of our Wayne County citizens would be in the House or Senate district rather than the presidential or congressional votes. But it would be interesting if that were possible to figure out. But I'm sure you'll do that in your spare time.
Yeah, one additional point is just that the changes in redistricting coincided with changes in term limits. And so we will have more capacity for these members to stay on longer than they would have before. I don't know if I'm calling on people or.
Commissioner Cullum?
Okay.
For the last two slides, just to be specific, is there a way for you to speak directly to the Detroit area for changes and trends that you noticed?
Yeah, so that was just in the area of all the districts that were touched. So the Detroit area, basically. Okay. What change was there? And basically the answer is not much because the incumbents won re-election in those places. And there was really one contested primary that wasn't successful. And then there was a replacement of a retiring candidate.
Thank you.
So what does that mean about the voters in Detroit if the same people won in districts that had, that were much more located in the city proper of Detroit and had a population in the primary election that consisted of a majority of Black folks?
Yeah, I think that's what I was saying about the two ways of putting it on. The people who were critical of the original maps would probably say that the original maps sort of put in a set of incumbents who were then advantaged regardless of how the maps were redrawn. And so they didn't face very many challengers in primaries. And in general elections, the seats were still overwhelmingly Democratic. I think if you, but I think you could take it as evidence that the changed maps, at least in the first election, did not make a big difference in terms of who the voters were selecting.
Thank you.
So yeah, there was a nationwide shift. Feel free to continue to interrupt me because we're now past the point at which I have a lot of directly relevant data to you. So it's still useful to get that. But I did want to show you overall, most places and groups moved towards the Republicans in the 2024 election. It was relatively uniform. We're still very interested in who moved most in what direction, but within Michigan, we mirrored the national trends. There were only a few places that moved towards the Democrats, mostly up around the Cherry Coast area, where there's a lot of internal migration. So it's even unclear there if that was voters actually moving towards the Democrats in those areas or just new people in those areas voting differently. So for the most part, we had a Republican moving election, but not a huge shift. The county level correlation in swing states and nationwide was 0.99 between one election and another. So most people and most places voted the same way, but to the extent they shifted toward the Republicans and away from the Democrats. Slide one. And let me know if you want to move on to other things, you can cut me off. Yeah.
Got one more for you. Commissioner Lett. Commissioner Lett, your hand is raised.
Okay. Other than the Cherry Coast where I live, were there any other surprises in Michigan or anomalies that you noted?
We had the same kinds of trends elsewhere. So to the extent that where Democrats lost more votes or Republicans gained more votes, they tended to be in areas with more non-white voters and more non-college white voters. So we'll see in a second that those are reflections of just long-term shifts in the electorate that continued in this election. But geographically, yeah, that was the main pattern that stood out. This is what I just said before, that the electorate is actually getting quite stable over time. This is one reason that people are sort of hyper-focused on the district lines. This is just the correlation between one election and the next across counties that a professor at Ohio State, put together that shows that 2024 is almost exactly on the line. So almost everybody voted exactly the same way in terms of geography that they voted in the prior election, and it's getting more stable over time. So we just don't have the capacity for shifts that we had before in the American electorate. And Michigan is moving even closer to the national popular vote. One thing we look at, we have, essentially these six, I guess we must have added one swing state on here that have remained nationally competitive and have gotten all of the attention. We're one of them, and we will continue to be one of them. In fact, we moved closer to the tipping point in this election, and we were second only to Pennsylvania in visits, in money, in any indicator of competitiveness. And so we'll continue to get the national attention. I did want to talk about the one other huge Michigan-specific change that you're all aware of, which is that although we don't have excellent individual level data on Arab American voters, it is overwhelmingly clear from geographic analysis that Arab American voters moved substantially, but disproportionately in the presidential election. So this is one set of data from East Dearborn, but you can see the similar kinds of shifts in Dearborn Heights and Hamtramck and Melvindale, and all places where we have substantial Arab American populations. There were shifts both from the Democrats to third-party voters and from the Democrats to Republican voters. Those were less pronounced in all other races than the presidency. So the state house and the U.S. House races and the U.S. Senate race did not see as big shifts, but they all showed some shifts in those same directions. So I think it's worth kind of asking, what does this mean from the perspective of you all? Obviously, this is at least a community of interest and also probably a constituency that needs to be taken into account in voting rights analyses. And it clearly had a shift here, and we're trying to we should ask ourselves, what should have happened as a result of that shift? Unfortunately, I'm not sure the answer is very clear. The local candidates in these areas were largely sympathetic to the concerns that the communities expressed. And so part of what you're doing in districting might not be about elections, but about who is represented. And by that, you might say it was a success. All of those local candidates heard the concerns of this constituency and reacted in their public positioning, in being open to candidates that they otherwise wouldn't be open to. And so that could be seen as a success. On the other hand, there wasn't any electoral manifestation of a pretty huge shift in votes, and obviously a lot of anger about a particular issue. So it is worth asking kind of what should have been the manifestation of that in election results. We didn't have one, but there are places like in international systems in the UK, in Canada, where you actually saw this same backlash produce actual new politicians, and we didn't necessarily have that kind of an effect.
Well, couldn't Donald Trump winning the presidential race be considered an electoral shift, considering the differences in how the Middle Eastern community voted in 2020 versus in 2024?
Yeah, it wasn't, even if you assumed a very high level of shift and the largest population you could imagine of Arab American voters, it still wasn't enough to account for the statewide shift to Trump or Trump's statewide margin. But certainly it was a contributing factor. And so that might be viewed as as a successful manifestation of the constituency shift. All right. Just a couple of maps that people put together just to show you the closest races that you often see. You often see very similar geographic results, but reflecting different outcomes. So this is where we're sitting in my own district, where Tom Barrett ran against Curtis Hertel, and the Republican Tom Barrett won that House district. It was also a district where, if you add up the presidential votes, Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris. But it was also a place where Alyssa Slotkin in the Senate race got more votes than Mike Rogers. And of course, it's Alyssa Slotkin's former U.S. House district that went from her to Tom Barrett. So it's just an example here that obviously most people in most places were voting the same. You can see the same basic structure of elections that you all have been dealing with, which is that Democrats are concentrated in the most urban areas. But it still would have resulted in a different outcome potentially if the Senate candidates were running in this district versus the current U.S. House candidates, if you assume people would have voted in a similar way. And our other close congressional race was the 8th district, where Kristen McDonald-Rivet won the U.S. House election. And here was a race where Alyssa Slotkin again got more votes than Mike Rogers. But it's a place where Donald Trump got more votes than Kamala Harris. So here, even though again, the same areas are voting the same ways. You can barely tell the difference in these maps. They made for a different outcome in the U.S. House race. So a different person was elected versus presidential and Senate data. Now, of course, not everyone votes in all three races. So this doesn't literally mean that people voted for one candidate and the other, but it in all likelihood means that there was lots of crossover voting between the U.S. House candidate and the presidential candidate. And that's just to say that the districts can sometimes be the same, but people are still evaluating the individual candidates. And at the point that we get close elections, we can see different results. Yep.
Well, this is fascinating. So I'm going to nerd out for a second with you, if that's okay.
That's what I'm here for.
How, it's a unique situation. You have the Republican candidate won the presidency, the Democratic candidate won the Senate race, and now we see two rather competitive House races in the 8th district and the 7th district or the 6th district? 7th district. That one went one way, and one went the other way in rather close races. What does that say about, people splitting tickets versus perhaps not voting in one race versus another race? And I think that's probably a pretty rare thing that we see in this country, where there's so much divergence in close races between candidates.
It's definitely declining over time, but because we're so close to 50-50 statewide, it means that a very small number of people, say selecting Alyssa Slotkin and Donald Trump, can make a difference in both races. But I would say from a districting perspective, these districts were drawn to be closely competitive, and they were closely competitive. And part of what close competition, I know you weren't trying to get competition, but you were trying to make the statewide votes such that Democrats or Republicans could win in a statewide in a statewide result. And part of that means some districts that could go either way. And in those districts, I actually think it's probably a positive sign that in those districts, different candidates or different levels of office are producing different results, because it means that we've made some districts that are competitive and do rely on the voters' reactions to the candidates themselves. All right. Cut me off when I'm done, when I'm supposed to be done. What? All right. This is maybe a little bit off topic, but I did want to just clarify. We do survey results as well, and we asked the voters of Michigan to place the candidates on an ideological spectrum from very liberal to very conservative. And this is just showing you that, unsurprisingly, people thought the Republican candidates were somewhat conservative, and people thought that the Democratic candidates were somewhat liberal. However, there was some differentiation. We asked people about Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Alyssa Slotkin, and you can see that Alyssa Slotkin was viewed as more moderate or less liberal than was Kamala Harris by the voters as a whole. And not the only explanation, but one explanation that we look to for why people might split their votes between candidates is how those candidates are perceived. And those differences weren't large, but they were actually large enough to mean that the median voter in Michigan placed themselves closer to Donald Trump than Kamala Harris, but also placed themselves closer to Alyssa Slotkin than Mike Rogers. So there could be some people who don't fully agree with either political party, and the candidates might make a difference in how the voters react to those candidates. I don't have this map from 2024 yet, but this is just to show you that it's a continuation of what happened in 2022, where Democrats got a bare majority of the statewide vote and then got a bare majority of the statewide seats. The same thing happened in reverse for Republicans this year, but you are going to see not much change to the geographic structure of these maps. Obviously, we didn't have the Senate competing this time, but in the House, we saw the Republican wins in Downriver, in Macomb County, and a couple of other places in that district around from Battle Creek. That was the closest, from Battle Creek to Albion. So a few changes, but really not a lot. And you're still going to see this same kind of geographic structure where you have this part going out from from central Detroit to the Lansing area, and then just a few other Democratic spots in the state in the most urban areas. So we'll continue to get probably something like those similar patterns. Again, I haven't updated this chart, but it would again show the lines pretty close. So this is just to show you that before you all did your work, we had a divergence between the statewide seat share and the statewide popular vote share in both the State House and the State Senate. Then in 2022, they were roughly matching. And in 2024, those lines will be very close again. So there was a difference, and that difference favored Republicans in terms of the seat share and the House share. Republicans were the party that controlled the previous redistricting process, so that is not surprising. But it did get us to rough parity in terms of the seats to votes. This is just a national picture to give you a sense that we have a very jaggedy electoral system. We can move back and forth. This is all of the U.S. House votes put together nationwide and all of the state House votes put together nationwide. I guess I'm not allowed to call on people. I would normally call on people here, but a few things that jump out, I think, is number one, they're extremely closely related. So as you said, it's rare for the Republicans to be winning in Congress, but losing in state houses. That essentially never happens on this trajectory going all the way back to the early 20th century. They're very closely correlated. You'll also notice, though, that they do move up and down. They're actually what we call negatively serially correlated, which means that whoever wins one election is immediately favored to lose the next election, or at least lose ground in the next election. So that happened here, and if you were betting, you would say it would be most likely to happen in the midterm elections next time. Doesn't happen with 100% certainty, but that's the norm. If you stare long enough, you'll see actually, though, that our shifts are in decline. That is, we used to go a lot more back and forth from one election to the next than we do today, where we're competing close to the 50-yard line on a but in a very narrow trajectory. So another way of looking at it is, no party has won the U.S. presidential popular vote by 10 points since 1984. So we have been, fighting between the 45-yard lines for 40 years in terms of the national popular vote. But there has been a big change. One aphorism that's important to redistricting is that we tend to overestimate change that happens in 2 years, but underestimate change that happens in 10 years. That's important because we only draw the lines, if we're lucky, every 10 years. So we tend to get results that are most consistent with theory in the couple of elections following the redistricting. So in other words, this was the easy part. We don't know if the districts in the future will lead to the same outcomes because you're likely to see more shifts in the geography. And this is the long-term pattern. This is Democratic votes for president divided into 3 boxes. One is non-college white voters, one is college-educated white voters, and one is non-white voters. And what we'll see is just a very long-term decline in the proportion of Democratic votes that come from non-college white voters. That has changed geographic election returns everywhere. Now, this doesn't mean that these voters change their opinions. We also have a more educated population and a more diverse population than we have. So part of what you would expect is some decline, but these lines actually look relatively flat for Republicans. So another way of putting that is the U.S. is changing, becoming more diverse and more educated, but that change is overwhelmingly concentrated in the Democratic Party. And so the Democratic Party is changing at twice the rate that the nation as a whole is. And then this is, again, we don't have 2024 here, but if you could just, this is the 1992 presidential election results in Michigan. And if you just push the play, it should be at the bottom. There you go, that little play button. So 1996, 2000, 04, 8, 12, 16, 20. So we don't have 24 yet, but it would look very, very similar to this. Just play it one more time so they can see that. Just the play right there. Yeah. So yeah, you can see that in the 90s, you know, that constituency graph that I just showed about Democrats gaining all of those voters among non-college white voters, that meant that Democrats had support, you know, throughout the Upper Peninsula, throughout the northern part of Lower Michigan, and Republicans had more support in the most geographically concentrated areas as well. But we've really reached a point of extreme geographic polarization now in the last two elections. This actually went down slightly in 2024, but not enough that you would be able to see it on the map when we produce the map. In other words, Republicans did disproportionately better in Detroit and in the areas surrounding Detroit and Flint compared to the rest of the state. So you would see a slight decline in geographic polarization, but we're still pretty close to that urban-rural divide. Questions? Yes. Oh, I'm not calling.
You may call. No question, but thank you.
Or
That was
comment,
interesting.
And I'll send you all the written report that John did, which reviewed those first couple of slides, what we know so far as well.
Commissioner Lott?
I wish to thank you, Matt, for coming in and giving us your standard lecture. Kind of off the wall, Ottawa County Commissioners had an unusual election in 2022, I believe. Do you have any information or any comments on what happened in 2024?
Yeah, there was a shift back away from I think the Ottawa Impact candidates there. Two things that matter in comparing 2022 to 2024 is obviously we have a different electorate, a much larger electorate, and that does matter in presidential years. So when we see these kind of big local intra-coalition shifts, they tend to be easier to achieve in the midterm year than the presidential year. And I think that was true here.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, going back to like your first two slides that went over the overall statewide results in 2022 and in 2024, I'd be interested to see how that compares to election results from before the state had an independent redistricting commission, and perhaps also to states that currently don't have one. You know, we've heard criticism lately that this whole experiment that we've undergone for the past 4 years might not be better than what we had in the past. However, from your data that you presented to us today, it seems that, well, we've made some pretty responsive maps. So do you have any comments about how this compares to the old system in Michigan or other states that might not have independent commissions that do redistricting?
Yeah, so you saw the historical graph. Definitely, this is as close to of a match between votes and seats as we've had. And that suggests success in meeting those partisan fairness metrics that you laid out. The tough thing, as you know, is that you had this whole series of criteria and some of the ones that are higher to the top are harder to measure. And so we don't necessarily want to just evaluate based on the ones that are the most measurable, even though, yes, those are the ones where we can most clearly signal success in meeting the metrics that you laid out. The same thing is true across states. Yes, Michigan was very close in seats and votes for both Congress and the State House compared to other state legislative chambers and Congress, other states' congressional delegations. And that was true, including in states that had like an advisory commission that didn't end up having its maps selected. So places where you had a most direct comparison between an independent redistricting commission and a other kind of redistricting process, you did see closer matches between seats and votes in the places that had redistricting commissions.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Doctor, for this presentation. If you could give John our regards as well. I know he probably put together some of that, so it's always nice to see you and hear from him as well. Okay, next on the agenda is new business 6B. However, we've been going for about an hour and a half now. So I'd suggest we take maybe a 5 to 10 minute break. How do y'all feel about that?
If we
Uh,
push on, we do have other, MDOS, some of us have other commitments this afternoon. So if we can get done as close to noon as possible, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, let's try to keep moving, get through this as fast as we can. We'll move on to new business item 6B, the lessons learned report. If there's no objection, I'll ask Executive Director Woods to facilitate this item. Are there any objections, commissioners? Mr. Woods, please proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. The CLOSA program at University of Michigan conducted interviews for our lessons learned as a result of the mapping process for 2024, but there was also some reflection on the past that was sent to the commission for review. I received no comments from anyone with regards to the lessons learned. And so we're just looking for approval of that document by the commission to release to the public.
Commissioner Orton.
I'll move that we approve that document.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Orton, seconded by Commissioner Weiss, to publish the lessons learned report. Is there any discussion on the matter? I'll just say I thought it was a very well put together report. Shout out to Close Up for putting it together. I think it really hits on lessons that we learned, as the name says. It goes over some of our successes and some of our weaknesses, and I think future commissions should really take a look at that document in particular, when figuring out how to do this the next time around. Commissioner Lett?
Yeah, I would move to amend the motion to accept the report for publication. It's not our report, it's the University of Michigan's report, so we're not approving or disapproving it. We're simply accepting it for publication in our materials. So I move to amend to accept the report for publication.
Second.
Commissioner Orton, will you accept that amendment as a friendly amendment to your motion?
I don't know how friendly, but yes, I'll accept it.
Saves us a vote. Okay, so we have a motion to accept the close-up lessons learned report. Is there any more discussion on the matter? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of the motion to accept the lessons learned reports from Close Up for publication, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted.
And it was a friendly amendment.
Okay, thanks.
All right, next up is new business item 6C, September financial year 2024 finance report. There's no objection. Mr. Woods, you'll also be facilitating this item. Is there any objection, commissioners? Please proceed, Mr. Woods.
Just give me a second trying to find it. That's the wrong one. Hold on. Okay, I know this is going to be hard to read, but it is in the commission's report, but also on the meeting materials with regards to the fiscal year 24 report. We have closed out the books for fiscal year 2024, and we returned a total of $676,097.72. As you know, we received 6.67 million, to rounding it up, for the commission. This additional amount was due to litigation in the AG case that we asked for more money. We also, as you know, we received our discounts per the contract. So shout out to Julianne Pastula who did that, and we were able to go as we did our contract review. Thanks to Commissioner Steve Lett, Donna Callahan, and Marcus Muldoon, we were able to go back and get those contractual savings that we already received from federal compliance, but also to receive it from Election Data Services as well as Fink Bresic. So you'll see those contractual savings as a result of this document, knowing that the commission wants to be fiscal hawks and account for every penny. We carried that through the closeout process. And so really would like to thank our Legislative Services Bureau team, Jeanette Thalen and Lori Kleinfeld, as well as our Insights 3 team that worked with us, Robert Wines and Gosha, who works with him as well. But this is the financial report. These are the final numbers for September. And then the closeout financial report of the documents that were signed by the state. So if there's any questions, I can take them at this time as it relates to the expenses in September and then the overall financial report for fiscal year 24. All right. Hearing none, just to clarify, Fink Bresic did get paid in September, but that's just the balance of the 5% that was recouped for the life of the contract.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. I do not see any questions. Next up is the October financial report.
We need to
You wanna-
accept the financial report.
Are there any motions regarding the financial report, commissioners?
I move we accept them as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the September and financial year 2024 financial report. Motioned by Commissioner Lett and seconded by Commissioner Muldoon. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it, and the report is adopted. Next up is new business item 6D. We also have 6E for November. Do you want to do them together, Mr. Woods?
We can, thank you.
Let's do them together if possible. That's October financial report and November financial report. If there are no objections, I'll ask Executive Director Woods to facilitate this item. Are there any objections, commissioners? Seeing none, please proceed, Mr. Woods.
Thank you. This is October and November. Our fiscal appropriation for fiscal year 25 is basically $3 million. You can see in October that we have outstanding bill from the consultant line drawing that we talked about a little bit earlier. Just for the record, that bill was received in December, not in October. And then in C, you see the telecommunications. It's highlighted because we received it after we received, we put the report together, but wanted to put that number in there as well as the local council. But both of the bills have been processed for payment through Legislative Services Bureau. And then once again, we just received this week the line drawing. Once again, it's due the 10th of every month, but just received that in December. So this has been an ongoing challenge for that particular contractor. For the month of October, our total expenses minus the consultant for the line drawing is $78,936.82. And then for the month of November, our total expenses, once again, minus the invoice for the consultant line drawing, as well as the technology, which is a standard fee that we get in the state, but that won't come until a little bit later. is $53,525.26. So, Mr. Chairperson, if we can just do the month by month approval, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Commissioner Orton.
I'll move that we approve the October financial report.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Orton, seconded by Commissioner Weiss to accept the October financial report. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. Are there any more motions, commissioners?
I'll move that we accept the November financial report.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Orton, seconded by Commissioner Kellum to accept the November financial report. Is there any discussion on the motion, commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. Next up on the agenda is new business item 6F, dormancy. Without objection, I'll ask local counsel Nate Fink to facilitate this item. Are there any objections, commissioners? Seeing none, Mr. Fink, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Know that trying to move through this as quickly as we can. So I will do as quick of an overview of the dormancy procedure as I can. I discussed this at the previous meeting, so it's certainly part of the commission's record already, and it's of course a part of the commission's rules of procedure. So section 3.3 is, I think Edward is pulling this up right now. Okay, section 3.3D says that at such time that all litigation filed against the commission and or the members is completed and no further action is required of the commission or its members, the commission will vote to move to dormant status. And if approved, the commission will notify MDOS and the Michigan legislature of the change of status. We are now at that point where all litigation filed against the commission has concluded, and there's no further action required of the commission or its members. So I will recommend that the commission move to go into dormancy. Section 3.3.1 addresses dormancy status. I'd encourage all commissioners to go back and read that provision so that you're aware of it in case the commission has to come out of dormancy status at some point between now and the next, the seating of the next commission. Once the commission assumes dormancy status, the commission staff has 30 days to complete the remaining obligations or such additional time. But I think that we're establishing the end of January is going to be the recommended time, with a slight extension for some additional business for Edward to conclude. The commission will coordinate with MDOS to address the change of status. The rest of this talks about some other technical logistics. All computers and phones in the possession of the commission and staff members shall be returned to MDOS for retention in MDOS's litigation hold room. There'll be imaging done to preserve data for any future litigation. All other records held by members and staff of the commission shall be turned over to MDOS. And it's important that commissioners and staff keep a record of any usernames and passwords, just in case you have to come back. There's a discussion of extension agreements with vendors and the like in anticipation of any potential future litigation. No additional payment after the commission's full dormancy status takes effect would be issued to any of those vendors, including yours truly. Upon the commission going into dormancy status and all final expenses being paid, any commission funds will be returned to the state. Just to be clear, during all times that the commission is in dormancy status, the members of the commission will not receive any compensation or reimbursement of expenses. And finally, the commission is required to designate one or more members of the commission as a contact person for the commission. MDOS will also designate a person or a position within MDOS as a contact person for MDOS. Commission members will keep MDOS apprised of any changes in their personal contact information. 3.3.2, scroll down a little bit, Edward, deals with reactivation. And I would also encourage commissioners to review this provision and read this through, because this is actually the provision that really addresses how the commission might come back if necessary. So if litigation is filed against the commission or its members or staff, the commission shall return to active status to address the litigation. If any member of the commission is notified of litigation in any way, you should notify MDOS, the contact person or the position within MDOS, who will then notify other members of the commission. MDOS will notify. Okay, I think that's just repeating some language there, but upon any litigation being filed, like I indicated, this is all also a little bit redundant, but the commission returns to active status. Commission and staff computers and devices will be returned to them for use in the litigation if necessary, or mapping if that becomes necessary. The commission and members and staff shall be entitled to compensation at that point if the commission does in fact return to active status. The MDOS and the Secretary of State shall convene a meeting of the commission members to take action as necessary to address any litigation and take steps necessary to defend against that litigation. Finally, the commission shall request a budget from the legislature, or shall request a budget be established and funded by the legislature pursuant to the Constitution and the legislature's constitutional obligation to fund the commission to defend against any litigation. And that's the process. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. If you have any questions after this, I'd be happy to address them too after you've had a chance to review this. Thank you.
Commissioner Lett.
Yeah, Nate, have you kind of laid out a map on what motions we need to address serially at this time right now?
A map, I don't know, not exactly, but I mean, I think it would be, of course, appropriate to have a motion to go into dormancy and to designate. I don't know if there's been a discussion of the people who, one or more members who will be designated in the position contained within MDOS. The chair and the vice chair. The chair and the vice chair. And so I think, contained within the motion or a separate motion would be to designate the chair and vice chair as the point people to coordinate the logistics of things. And beyond that, I mean, I think that's concluded. Obviously, like I indicated, the commissioners have an obligation to notify the MDOS if they become aware of any litigation in the future, but I don't know that necessarily needs to be contained within any sort of motion. That's just an ongoing obligation that commissioners should be aware of.
All right, let me try these motions and keep track of them for me if you would. I think that the best way to do it would be to take the dormancy motion last. So I think we're at the point of the contacts for once we are dormant, contact persons. And as I just heard, would be the chairman and the vice chair currently in place, which would be Anthony Eade and Cynthia Orton. So the motion would be those two individuals would be the contact persons, at least initially. That's the motion.
Second.
We have a motion made by Commissioner Lett, seconded by Commissioner White to designate myself and Commissioner Orton as the contact people in the case of reactivation. Is that correct, Mr. Lett?
Yeah, that's correct. I gotta pick young people. I'm too damn old.
Is there any discussion on the motion, commissioners?
And so is Richard. He's too old too.
Well, as they say, with age comes wisdom, and you two are both more wise than I am, but I appreciate it. Commissioner Orton, you're okay with doing that? Okay. If there's no more discussion, we'll vote on that motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted.
Yeah,
You
I
had a
would see
couple
it.
more?
Pardon?
You had a few more?
Oh, yeah. The process calls for once we choose to go dormant, that there's a 30-day wrap-up that needs, in my opinion, to be extended to the end of February. So the motion would be that the wrap-up period would be from actually today, which I assume we're going to take to vote, until the end of February.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Lett, seconded by Commissioner Weiss to have the wrap-up period during this dormancy status last till the end of February. Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Orton?
So I think we already designated that it would be a specific date, which is January 31st. I thought we kind of did that before, but my concern is it's kind of a catch-22 of if Edward keeps working, then he keeps getting paid, but he gets paid the following week, then it has to wrap up the next month. You know, there's never an end to the work, the finances part. So
I'm not
think-
done yet.
Okay, so I think we should stick with January 31st unless Edward Woods has a different thought.
Mr. Fink?
Well, my motion, follow-up motion would be to advance as of January 31st, advance payment for Edward through the end of February. That way we're not continually keeping going.
Okay, I understand.
Well, we have a few things. I think, Mr. Fink, you had something to say?
Well, no, Brother Council Commissioner Lett addressed it for now. So, thank you.
So there is a motion on the table for the end of February. That's still on the table.
Chair, if I may, who seconded that motion? Commissioner Lett's motion. Thank you.
Commissioner Weiss. But then you're going to make a follow-up motion, Commissioner Lett, regarding Executive Director Wood's payment structure?
Yes.
Okay, but your original motion is still till the end of February, correct?
Correct.
Okay, is there any more discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, we will move to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Commissioner Lett?
All right. I move that the remuneration for Executive Director Edward Woods III will be paid through the end of January while he works on wrapping up our business, with the addition of an advance of salary through the end of February to be paid at the end of January. And if I have a second, I'll speak to this motion.
Second.
Not everybody at once, please. As was indicated, the map drawers, while they draw good maps, they're terrible at billing. And we're still dealing with them to get that straightened out. And at the rate they're going, it'll be into February before that happens. On our end, I have been informed, and Commissioner Orton was the one who provided this information to me, as well as Executive Director Woods. Nobody seems to want to step up and take care of paying our bills after we go dormant. So that leaves Executive Director Woods to do that work. And as we've indicated in our prior discussion, if we roll them over into the February pay period, then we're really into March. So pulling it back into January with the advance seems to be the most expeditious way to do it. So that's the purpose of this motion.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion, commissioners?
Chair, for the record, can I just confirm with Commissioner Lett that I've recorded this motion properly? So your motion is to pay Executive Director Woods for work done to wrap up the commission through January 31st, 2025. Additionally, approve an advance payment to Executive Director Woods for work done in February 2025 to be paid on January 31st, 2025. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I don't know that the January 31st is the pay date. Whatever the last pay date in January would be, what would be used.
I'll change that language to be paid on the last pay date of January 2025.
Perfect. Is there any discussion, commissioners? I believe I still have to approve of those fees to go through, which I'm happy to do as long as they're all in order. And I won't be being compensated for that, which is fine. But that should allow us to wrap up and get into this deactivation phase. With that said, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted.
Okay, next would be a motion that pay for all commissioners will cease. And the last pay will be for, and I don't have a calendar up, whatever December pay date is.
December 22nd is the week ending pay period.
For the week ending December 22nd, which basically is this week. So that would be the motion that this pay date will be our last pay. We will go out of pay status at that time. And then the next motion will be that we'll go dormant. So taking care of the pay is the motion to stop on December 22nd.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Lett, seconded by Commissioner Orton to have the week ending in December 22nd be the last pay period that commissioners are compensated for in accordance with the dormancy policy document. Is there any discussion on the matter? Mr. Woods, the pay stubs lag 1 week, right? So our last actual pay date would be the 26th, correct?
The 27th, but that is
27th.
correct. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Is there any discussion on the matter, commissioners? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted.
All right, I think one follow-up that I thought of, Commissioner Ede said he would be approving whatever is necessary to approve, and there'll certainly be some things that will come through that need to have a commissioner look at them, and he would be the one. So the motion would be that Commissioner Ede would continue to approve and sign necessary documentation as required during the period of dormancy, but would not receive any compensation for those duties.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Lett, can you restate your motion, please?
Yeah, the motion is that the chairman of the commission, currently Commissioner Ede, would be authorized to approve any necessary documentation or expenditures as has been the usual practice, but would not receive any compensation for these additional duties after dormancy.
Wonderful. Was that clear, Department
Mr.
State?
Chairman,
Mr. Fink,
apologize.
go ahead.
I think it would be prudent to designate an alternate or a substitute should Commissioner Ede not be available for any reason.
Would you like to designate an alternate in your motion, Commissioner Lett?
Sure, I would take that as a friendly, even though it's coming from an attorney, a friendly amendment to designate Cynthia Orton as alternate.
Sounds good. Is there any discussion on the motion, commissioners? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted.
Now, Attorney Fink, I think that wraps up everything but going dormant. But I will look for your blessing for that position.
Thank you.
Now, if you need to consult with the senior attorney, you get him on the phone.
We've got one on the screen right here. Thank you, Commissioner Lett. I think that satisfies all the obligations here, and I think the only step now is to move to go into dormancy and to acknowledge that great university in Ann Arbor.
The one that lost a basketball game by 1 point last night?
You know, 4-point plays, you know.
Did Oklahoma plant their flag in the middle of the floor?
They were entitled to.
Are there any motions, commissioners?
You know, I've made all these motions. Somebody else can make the motion to go dormant.
Commissioner Orton.
I move that the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission go dormant today, December 19th, 2024,
Second.
until such a time as we have to be called back.
We have a motion made by Commissioner Orton, seconded by Commissioner Muldoon. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Can I offer a friendly amendment? Can we add that you will do so at the conclusion of this meeting so that we can wrap up the business that's still on the agenda?
That would be helpful.
That's a great idea. Yes, amended, so amended.
Okay, we have a motion to move to dormancy executed at the end of today's meeting. That'll be until we are recalled in accordance with our dormancy rules and procedures, or until our terms expire. Is there any discussion on the motion, commissioners?
Well, we need to finish up the agenda before we officially take the vote. So let's put that on the table and finish the business and then bring it back and vote on it.
I
Well,
don't,
I think we're okay because we added that caveat to be once the meeting concludes.
Okay, yes, it's fine.
Did you have something? Okay. All right, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it. We'll move to dormancy at the conclusion of today's meeting. Okay, next up on the agenda is approval of the minutes. We have received minutes from the October 17th meeting. A draft version of these minutes have been provided to the commission before this meeting and are posted on the commission's website. Are there any motions pertaining to the meeting minutes, commissioners?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Weiss to approve the October 17th meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on the minutes?
Good.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 All those opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. We also have item B, possible minutes corrections. Executive Director Woods, I'll let you speak on this item.
I don't think we have them at this time, so let's designate that the chair and the vice chair will work with me on that to getting that issue resolved.
I will make that motion.
And of course, with no pay, unfortunately.
That is quite all right. There's a motion to have myself and Vice Chair Orton work with Executive Director Woods to get the corrected meeting minutes out there. Is there any discussion on the motion, commissioners?
I second the motion.
All right. So that was made by myself, seconded by Commissioner Orton. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. Next up, we have an executive director's report. If there's no objection, I'll ask Executive Director Woods to provide his report. Are there any objections, commissioners? Seeing none, please proceed, Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Chairperson Eid and the members of the commission. Just want you to know we will update the commission attendance report, and this will provide an opportunity for future commissioners to know how much time was actually spent in commission meetings. Obviously, doesn't include drive time and other times that might be missing, but just to kind of give people a adequate amount or an estimated time of the commitment. Being the inaugural commission, there was not a lot of history with regards to that, more or less speculation. But now they have an idea of knowing how much time that was spent. The outstanding attendance record of the commission being about 93% in terms of commissioner attendance as a whole. And I just thought that would be something to share. We also have presentations, over 300 presentations done by the commission as a result of that and the things that we did. So just something to document, our outreach and the things that we have done with regards to that. I really want to express our appreciation to the Michigan Department of State, the Honorable Jocelyn Benson, Secretary of State, but also to Mike Brady, Sarah Reinhart, Megan Shar, Nelson Lawin, Sally Marsh, Yvonne Young, Jeanette Sawyer, Chad Betsett, Kim Metzger, Michael Doyle, Aaron Lilly, and others at MDOS who've done an outstanding job in terms of getting the inaugural commission started, in terms of their partnership from the inception to the present, And we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge the outstanding contributions of the Michigan Department of State. I could go on, but we're under time constraints. But Megan, please know that you're greatly appreciated, as well as Yvonne, with regards to all that you guys have done and for the commission. Let's give them a round of applause. You know, 2024, we've done the remedial map. So a lot of things have changed in about a year. We realized that we were going to be working another year together, and we were going to have 3 new faces. But we want to recognize those behind the scenes that have helped us in 2024 with regards to our house and remedial maps. The Regional Interpreting Network, we want to give them a shout out. Thank you so much again to Bethany and her team. We greatly appreciate you. And thank you. QA Captions, want to thank them for our closed captioning. Annette Bly and her team. Want to definitely thank Chase Creative, Mary and Matt and their team. We want to thank them. Want to thank 98 Forward, who worked with us during the House phase. McConnell Communications, who worked with the House and Senate phase, led by Darcy McConnell. Culturate Public Relations and Design Company, Brittany Mosley, who led out with that in the Senate phase as well. Our Legislative Services Bureau, once again, really want to give out a shout out to Janelle Thalen, and and Lori Kleinfeld, who have worked tirelessly with us. Janice knows them from our days with the auditing, but we would be remiss if we did not recognize them and thank them. As you guys know, we're very detail oriented and want to get things right as the inaugural commission, and they've been very helpful with that, as long as Insights 3, who has done a tremendous job. Bob Wines and Gosha have done a tremendous job to making sure we're balanced to the penny and that the commission funds are accounted for. I'd be remiss if we didn't thank them. And then our close-up team, who helped us out with the aggregating the public comments for the Senate phase, which was something that we put in our lessons learned report from 2022 that we were able to implement, and then also doing the lessons learned report, so for 2024. So if we can give this group of outstanding people a round of applause, that would be great. Then we want to thank our vendors and former staff. We want to thank Baker Hostetler. They helped us out in 2024 as the litigation counsel and the voting rights counsel. So definitely want to give a thank to Kate McKnight, who was basically the lead person for the whole litigation council, and Patrick Lewis, who assisted, and then the voting rights council with E. Mark Braden, and then Max Palmer, who was very instrumental in helping us with regards to the remapping process. Fink Bresick, David Fink, and of course our favorite Fink, since he's in our presence, Nate Fink, as expected, the great University of Michigan fan that Commissioner Stephen Lett has on his wall. And we want to thank him for that. And then also would like to thank Election Data Services for our line map drawing, as well as our partisan fairness analysis. Want to thank Election Data Services as well. And then we'd like to thank our former staff, our former Executive Director, Sue Ann Hammersmith, our former General Counsel, Julianne Pastula, our former Executive Assistant, and Sarah Martinez, and our former event planner and Executive Assistant, and Kristen Taylor. If we can give them a round of applause. And then last but not least, we want to give a shout out to Voters Not Politicians, who put this ballot in place with regards to drawing fair maps with citizen input using the 7 ranked redistricting criteria. We would not although they did the legislation, they did not do the work of the commission, but they enabled the commission by getting proposal 2018 to passed by more than 61% of Michigan voters in 2018. So let's give Voters Not Politicians a shout out for democracy. For our highlights in October, in terms of our website, 27,300 pages, 67.5 were new residents or new people. The bulk of the maps went to look at the final district maps at 45%. The top people where they were looking at our maps in October, or I should say our website, were from Michigan, Virginia, Florida, Illinois, and Georgia. In September, it was Michigan, Virginia, Florida, Illinois, and Ohio. For November, our website stats were up at 34,600 page views. 30% were new residents. The bulk of them were looking at our final and district maps. In November, the bulk of the people came from Michigan, Florida, Virginia, Georgia, and New York, whereas in October was Michigan, Virginia, Florida, Illinois, and Georgia. And then last but not least, I would like to thank the members of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, to start off first as your Communications and Outreach Director and to finish as your Executive Director. It has been an opportunity of a lifetime where I have learned lessons that will last with me for a lifetime and have grown. And understanding the ability to get along and work together as a team, to work throughout disagreements, but most importantly, to ensure that the citizens of Michigan receive fair maps with citizen input. So I would like to give a shout out to Commissioner Elaine Andrade, Commissioner Donna Callahan, the late Commissioner Douglas J. Clark Jr., Commissioner Juanita Curry, Commissioner Anthony Eade, Commissioner Brittany Kellum, Commissioner Rhonda Lang, Commissioner Stephen Lett, Commissioner Marcus Muldoon, Commissioner Cynthia Orton, former Commissioner MC Rothhorn, Commissioner Rebecca Zatella, Commissioner Janice Follett, Commissioner Aaron Wagner, Commissioner Richard Weiss, and former Commissioner Destin Witches for providing me this great opportunity. I will cherish it for a lifetime, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mr. Chairperson, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Executive Director Woods, and thank you for all of the shout outs. I was thinking about doing that myself, but you did a much better job than I could ever have done keeping track of everyone. And I'd just like to second all of the acknowledgements that Executive Director Woods just laid out. This has been a rather large effort, and everyone who has been involved has been a contributing member of the team. We appreciate you. Next up is the legal liaison report. Is there a legal liaison report today, Commissioner Lett?
There's always a legal liaison report.
All right, if there's no objection, I'll ask the MICRC legal liaison, Commissioner Lett, to provide his report.
My
Please
report
proceed,
today,
Commissioner Lett.
my report today is to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, or I think it's a Happy Hanukkah, if I'm correct. If I'm not, whatever it's to be used, and a Happy New Year and prosperous New Year to everybody. Since I'm not there, I will use this time as my report and point of personal privilege. It's been wonderful working with everybody. Thank you, and good luck in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Lett. Next up is MDOS updates. If there's no objection, I'll ask Megan Sharp from the Department of State if there are any MDOS updates.
We do not have any updates, but I do just want to express the department's gratitude for all of your hard work and dedication to this first redistricting commission. I think you've set a good example of how this can be done in the future. So thank you all for your time and dedication on behalf of the department.
Thank you very much. Correspondence, if any was available, was received in advance of today's meeting, along with written public comments to the commission. Given that this is our last meeting, there are no future agenda items, but there is one announcement. We have made, after Executive Director Woods had that acknowledgement, I noticed he was not in that acknowledgement, and he certainly deserves one. So we have put together an unofficial resolution of appreciation for our Executive Director, Edward Woods III, who has been with us for, oh gosh, just about 4 years now. That resolution reads, "Let it be known that the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission honors the contributions of Edward Woods III to the great state of Michigan, recognizing him as a master of meticulous coordination, a tireless communicator, a champion of unity, and an unapologetic Dallas Cowboys fan." Whereas Executive Director Woods has served with distinction as the Commission's Communication Director and Executive Director, playing an instrumental role in upholding the core principles of fairness, awareness, transparency, and engagement with steadfast commitment and grace. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission hereby recognizes and celebrates the exemplary leadership, unwavering dedication, and profound impact of Edward Woods III. His service has not only supported the commission in community outreach and the creation of fair maps, but has also enriched the commission with his authentic spirit, his ability to bridge divides, and his incomparable dedication to the Dallas Cowboys. Let it be further resolved that the commission acknowledges Edward Woods III as a role model in civic engagement, a champion for fairness, and a reminder to us all that true leadership is measured not just by what one accomplishes, but by how one leads with integrity, with heart, and with a little bit of humor along the way. Issued by current and former commissioners on the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. We appreciate you, Executive Director Woods, and thank you for sticking with us thus far.
Well said.
I'd also like to echo the statements earlier to all of the commissioners. It's been a long road. We've been together for 4 years now. I don't think any of us thought we'd be here for this long when we signed up for this job, but here we are. We've had over 200 official public meetings and have done over 300 public engagement events. Since that time, we've been thrust in the public spotlight. We've undergone ups and downs. We've undergone death threats, personal attacks, and we've all done our best. And I think we got the job done. While there's no perfect system for redistricting, I think we accomplished the goals that we set out to do in creating fair districts for the state of Michigan. But more importantly, I want to thank y'all for learning from each and every one of you over the last 4 years. And I truly think that all of the commissioners present here today really came into this with the best of intentions, and we all have done our best for the state of Michigan. Thank you all. I appreciate you, and I hope you all stay in touch. With that said, the items on today's agenda are concluded, and the commission has.
They are not, Chair. Sorry.
They are not.
I would like to present and share my screen. I have today's meeting minutes for you all to scroll through and tentatively approve. So let me go ahead and do that. So I will just scroll slowly, and if anyone needs me to stop or anything, please let me know.
Megan, can you go back a little bit, please? Thanks.
In the middle of the page, the motion for the commission to enter dormancy at the conclusion of today's meeting and for Executive Director Woods to complete commission business by January 31st.
I'm sorry, that was an extra copy and paste. That just needs to come out. Thank you for that catch. So if the commission is okay with these minutes, I believe you could motion to approve these minutes, and then Chair Eid and Vice Chair Orton have the ability to authorize any changes or corrections needed to minutes. So that would allow me to put in the final names here and the adjournment time. We can do that through that process.
Sounds good to me. So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by me, seconded by Commissioner Muldoon, to accept today's meeting minutes as presented. If there are any edits or timings or names to be put in, Commissioner Orton and I will facilitate that and make sure it gets on our website. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. Commissioner Kellum.
So please forgive me if this has already been said, but I think that we can't adjourn today, and I, along with everyone else, am anxious to get out of here. However, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to all the members of the public, every single person that came out and spoke and shared, every citizen of this state of Michigan, because we could not do this without you, no matter how you participated. I hope that and pray that our reflections keep coming, but that we take this moment and recognize that we truly were a part of making a ruckus in a good way and making history, and that this was more than a job. We were all here and appointed for such a time. So I'm sure that we will continue to be fond of one another and even think about how big this experience was for generations to come. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to every person in Michigan.
All right, any more business, commissioners? Any more announcements? You know, the resolution we gave to Edward Woods a few minutes ago was an unofficial resolution. Would the commission like to make it an official resolution?
I
Are there
move
any
we make it
motions
an
to such?
official resolution.
Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Lett, seconded by Commissioner Valette to have the motion that I read earlier regarding the acknowledgement of Edward Woods III be an official motion of the commission. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Do we have to re-approve the minutes or? Okay, wonderful. All right. For the final time, commissioners, as the items on the agenda are completed, the commission has no further business and a motion to adjourn is in order. Are there any motions?
I move that we adjourn and by this action go into dormant status.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Lett and a second by everyone. Let's say Commissioner Kello. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. The ayes have it, and we are adjourned at 12:34 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.